All right, I think all my business is taken care of now. But I am on APTA staff. I'm not a physical therapist or physical therapist assistant. APTA is a really large organization, and we have about 150 people on staff. And right now, only about 15 of them are physical therapists. And we have 2 physical therapist assistants on staff. Everyone else is, has expertise in all areas of association management, like membership marketing, like public relations. We have a really big, talented government affairs staff. We've got staff in education, staff in specialist certification. So we're a large organization, we're a big shop. So I'm one of 150 people who work to serve you, our members. My role specifically is to work to be the staff liaison to the student board of directors. So every year I get to work with this very talented group of 10 students to help move the initiatives and the goals of the association forward, to help us engage our student members as best as we can, because there's almost 30,000 student members in the association. And really, the purpose of the student board is to provide a means for all of you to, meet each other whenever possible, to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, to connect with each other, and to promote the interests of our student members who are, obviously the future of the association. So the current structure of the student board is that it's a 10-person board. There's a president, a vice president, a secretary who takes minutes from the meetings, official minutes. There's a director of membership, a director of communications. We have a delegate who represents our student members in APTA's House of Delegates every year. We have a director of SPTA relations, and then we have a 3-person nominating committee, and that's where Tayo, Tyler, and Zofia serve. So their role is to find students to run for this body. They also play a very critical role in a lot of our social media outreach, the socials that we do every month to, again, kind of help you guys find each other, connect, learn, all that good stuff. So my job is really, really fun. But I just wanted to kind of frame tonight's conversation, because you're going to learn from Zofia and Tyler and, Tayo, what you need to do to apply for a position, what it means if you're elected. But I just wanted to frame it around the influence and the impact that I've seen the student board have since I've been working with them. I started in 2008 working with the student board, and they are a very influential, impactful group. In my opinion, the students who consider and apply and run and are elected are really the cream of the crop of our association. I mean, it is a very high level of engagement. So thank you all again for your interest and for being here. But one of the primary ways that I've seen the board have a really heavy influence on the association is just how diverse the student board has been since the moment I started working with them. This board pulls from all over the country, from all nationalities, from all races. We've had just as many female presidents as we've had male presidents. We've had just as many delegates in the House that are female as male. We had our first African-American student president 3 years ago. So we just see a lot of diversity on this board, and the students who serve on this board, even the students who run for this board, regardless of whether they're elected, stay very involved in the association. So going through this process, in my eyes, is extremely important for the association. Hopefully you'll find it to be a really positive experience. You'll make a lot of friends, you'll make a lot of connections, and continue to kind of leave your mark on the association. The student board really did set the stage for APTA to launch on social media. It sounds kind of funny to say now, but the students were doing it for a solid 2 years before the association as a whole kind of got their feet wet on that platform. We set up, the Core Ambassador Network. That's been probably 15 years now. That's been a really good way to give students a higher level of kind of involvement, engagement, and really help us make that connection on the local levels with our chapters. The student board every year has appointed project committees. So in the work that they do throughout the year, when they have to pause and think about, do we have the bandwidth ourselves to take this on, they have the ability to appoint project committees to do very specific work to help them move their goals forward. Again, that's become a very, very valuable way for students to get engaged and then stay engaged afterwards. When we had our National Student Conclave, we had a meeting that was just for students. We did things at that conference that APTA is still kind of duplicating. We did Ignite Talks first. We had a student neighborhood in the exhibit hall first at NSC. That conference just raised the energy and the positivity of the association across the board. Several very high-level APTA leaders would tell me year after year that was their favorite conference to attend. And I think that that's had a very big impact and influence on our combined sections meeting and how that meeting is run. And obviously the student delegate has been very influential in the House of Delegates. Currently, our student members do not have a vote in the House of Delegates. The physical therapist assistants just last year, a motion was approved to give our physical therapist assistants 2 votes in the House. So we still have our fingers crossed for students in the very near future. But despite not having a vote, the student voice is extremely powerful in the House of Delegates. Our student delegate is, asked for their feedback on just about all of the motions. Student input is needed because everyone in the House knows that you're the future of the association. And as far as the kind of impact that I've seen the student board have, one of the first times that I really kind of thought, that this is a group of highly talented leaders was in 2011. Before 2011, a PT and a PTA student could take the National Physical Therapy exam whenever they wanted. It was just kind of a rolling, exam. You found a testing site, you could take your exam whenever you wanted. And there was a pretty large scale cheating episode in 2011. So the Federation kind of locked down the test. And at that point forward was when they decided to only give the exam 4 times a year. Well, that was a very difficult message to deliver to students at the time, because it really just kind of changed the way they were planning to study. It changed, a lot of them had jobs on the line that they were, looking to start and, become licensed physical therapists. But we really leaned on the student board to help us deliver that message. They stayed really calm. They delivered the message in a really positive way, and were just kind of a sounding board for students who were feeling kind of panicked over that decision. They've made significant changes to their own structure. So, 7-8 years ago, there was no director of membership or director of communications on this board, and they changed their governance documents to reflect that. And then the nominating committee chair-elect, which is where Zofia is sitting right now, is a 2-year position. So that position gets mentored for a year and then rotates up to nominating committee chair. And that's been extremely valuable for this leadership group, just kind of having that consistency year after year. The students were the first, the student board was the first to kind of scrap their newsletter. It's kind of boring. Let's do more blogging. Let's do more kind of interactive writing and share that with our students. The flash action strategy, that idea start to finish was birthed in the student boardroom. Increasing our awareness for our student physical therapist assistants. We've had a year where we had 2 SPTAs sit on this board, and that was extremely valuable. Just the work that the student board has done in the House. They were the first to do their board meetings virtually. Again, that must seem like completely inconceivable to all of us by this point, but the student board has been doing their calls on video for a long time. And I was really uncomfortable with it at first, but now it's just the way we do things. So, just to give you guys a feel of just kind of the impact, the influence, this year's board assembled a DEI project committee that produced a toolkit that's going to be posted to APTA's website in a couple of weeks. Our director of SPTA relations, Ashka, has completely, she's working with our PTA caucus. She's helped them turn around their social media presence. And the connection that our board continues to have with our core ambassadors, with our student SIG leadership at the local level, has really kind of been very impactful in connecting our students and giving students just kind of a platform and a format to find each other and to learn from each other. And just, real quick, and then I'll quit talking, but, some projections for 2023, some things that, if you're elected, if you decide to apply and run, and if you're elected for the board, some projected projects for 2023 could be, just continuing to increase and enhance our social media presence. I think that connecting virtually is here to stay for all human beings on this planet, and how we continue to do that well, and how we continue to keep connecting, keep the conversation going after the event, I think is something we can kind of dive into. Increasing awareness of our Leadership Congress, which is our newest meeting. It's gonna happen in August. We want students to be in that space. We want our student leaders to be in that space. We've set up a community on the APTA Hub just for our student leaders, so our core ambassadors and our SIG leaders, and we want to make that a space where they can connect and learn from each other. So really just kind of getting that, getting that chugging along a little bit more. And then, Teo is going to talk a little bit more about this, but, just how we can continue to better align the student leadership group with the work of the association, so that you're working at a very high level, you feel that your work is valuable, you feel that you're making an impact, and that you're completely aligned with APTA's mission and vision. So Teo, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for taking this step.
Yeah, so thank you again, Lisa, for kind of going over a large overview of kind of what the student board is, kind of the impact that you can make as a student. I think that's something that's really important. Is it may seem as if, oh, we're just students, we can't really do much, or I don't really know what we can do, but there are a lot of things that staff and just the big board themselves have learned from the student board. And so you really have a chance to kind of cement in a future vision for what APTA will look like. So that's a great opportunity to have. And it's definitely something that will keep people involved kind of past their student experience, kind of like what Lisa was saying. It's a lot of people who, whether they're applying, they're slated, they weren't elected, people will continue on just because of the experiences that they've had here. And it's just a lot of fun. You get to meet students from all over the country. You get to meet clinicians from all over the country. And so we have definitely enjoyed our time so far. So I'm gonna pass it over to Zofia. She's gonna go over the new positions and kind of see how that is gonna look like now.
Thank you, Tayo. So I'm going to drop a link to a PDF of the document in case you guys want to follow along. And I might also share my screen just so I have it all in front of me. All right, are you guys seeing it? Okay. So like Lisa said, the student board in the past has consisted of 10 members, and it still consists of 10 members. 2 positions, or well, really I should say 3 positions that haven't changed too much have been the president, vice president, and the student delegate. But now the student delegate is going to be split into 2 positions. It'll be the student chief delegate and the student delegate elect. So both of these are a 1-year term, but the student delegate elect is going to become the student chief delegate on their 2nd year. So basically, it's kind of similar to how it has been. They basically represent the APTA student members and kind of serve as a go-between between the APTA big board and APTA staff members and the student board. And then the vice president will assume the roles of the president if the president is absent, but they also have a bonus role of overseeing all activities and communications with the core ambassadors. So if you're really friendly and outgoing and you would love to network with the core ambassadors, then maybe this is the role for you. I touched on chief delegate. This is someone who's passionate about advocacy and passionate about being a voice for students at next month, the APTA House of Delegates. So if you're really interested in policy, things like that, then this is probably the position for you. And then the delegate-elect, which becomes the student chief delegate in their second year on the board. And then they will be mentored in their first year by the student chief delegate. And then we have our director of SPTA relations, or D-STAR. So this is our student PTA specific role that kind of represents the voice of PTA students and things like that. And then this year, one of the biggest changes in this upcoming election cycle is that now we will have 5 directors rather than a director of membership and a secretary and a director of communications. Now it's kind of a little more open, and they'll work together as a team to kind of split tasks and responsibilities between each other. And this kind of means that if you're really passionate about social media and you're a director, then you can take on more of those social media responsibilities. But if you're not really a social media person, then maybe you can take on some other responsibilities and kind of split them up and work as a team to get the job done. But yeah, that's basically the positions. So I'm going to pass the mic back to Tyler to talk about kind of why these changes happened.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophia. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature as well to ask a question. But basically, so you may be asking, well, okay, if there are a lot of great things that were going on, why are you making changes? So essentially, last year at House of Delegates, there was a motion that was passed that updated the bylaws. Through that bylaws change, there was a way to almost make a lot of the groups be more, I wouldn't say simplistic, but to make things align in an easier way. And one of those changes was the engagement groups. So now, instead of the APTA Student Assembly, it's going to be the Student Engagement Group. And so essentially, it simplifies in the way of, if you're a student, you're an APTA member, you're a part of the Student Engagement Group. So with going with that, we also wanted to make sure that everything was in line, whether that's at the APTA Board of Directors, or aka the big board for us, or the student board. A lot of times there were things that varied and were different. And so through this change, it's going to make things a lot more streamlined so that everyone's kind of going toward the same vision for APTA. So that's kind of the reason why we've gone through the change, and will align our student board a lot better with the board of directors. It will allow the board of directors to streamline some of the ideas to us as well. So it will make things better for the future as they continue on, versus having some things that will be more particular to the students that wouldn't necessarily translate further on as they go to becoming a clinician. So that's kind of where some of the changes have come through. And so because of that update, that's why some of the positions look like that, is because it actually reflects what is going on with the board of directors. So they have directors as well, just as now the students will. And ultimately, it's going to allow the students to, on that board, actually have an easier way to engage in other tasks. So, currently at the moment, we have a director of communications. So a lot of the social media stuff, for example, goes through our director of communications. Having 5 directors, now that can be split amongst all of them. Okay, maybe someone out of that 5 really loves social media, or 2 of them do, so they can actually rotate through certain tasks just versus just having it with one person. Same thing with the core ambassadors. Our vice president's going to be overseeing all the activities, but the directors will be able to have a hand in as well through different regions, so that there's sort of one contact person for each region versus the vice president just having all of the responsibility of the core ambassadors. So with the changes to the positions, it actually allows the group to really work together toward a certain goal, or toward the certain vision that we want for the year. So essentially, that's kind of where the changes were. And if there are any questions about that, we definitely are willing to answer them. And lastly, as well, with the chief delegate and the student delegate position, that was something where the delegate position can kind of be harder if you don't understand policy as much and have that guidance. And that's where that position might be better to have the 2-year role, so that you can have someone go through a full year of understanding what it really means to be involved in the House of Delegates, how policy works, so that they can then take over the chief delegate role and have another person as well to streamline that approach to what they actually want to achieve for the year. So that's kind of where that change became between like the nominating committee chair-elect and chair to now having the chief delegate and a student delegate. So if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand. If not, I'm going to pass it over to Tyler, and he's going to kind of go over now some of the elections and application process.
Yeah, so just wanted to go over a quick timeline for everybody. So the applications are now open. Of course, they open on June 27th, and they'll be open until July 22nd. From August 1st to August 13th, interviews will take place. September 27th, the slate will be announced. So those candidates who applied and interviewed and were selected to be on the slate, that will be announced on September 27th. And then the ballot, the actual voting will take place to the month of November. It will open on November 1st, and then it will close on November 30th. And I'll put a little message in the chat too as well, so you have all the dates.
Yep. And so just some other things that people may have been asking, or things that you may be wondering are, what qualifications are we looking for? So I think the biggest thing to understand is that you don't need to have, a 10-page resume to be able to apply for the student board directors. You don't have to have 4.0 GPA, getting A's in all your classes to apply for the board, because I sure as heck did not have that throughout my 3 years. We're really just looking for students who are passionate about the profession, are passionate about wanting to learn and wanting to, or willing to serve the students that are across the country, whether that's a student physical therapist or a student physical therapist assistants. We really just want people who want to become leaders in the future. Like, this is a great opportunity for people to come together and to create and be innovative. And especially this year, being that we are going through a change, it's really going to be a great opportunity for this first group of 10 students to kind of figure out what's going to be the vision for this new engagement group, what these students are really going to look forward to. So I think that's the biggest thing that we look for as far as qualifications. Now, of course, if you've had previous leadership, you've had previous experience with APTA, that is definitely helpful, but it's not required. Even before, my personal example, I wasn't involved in a leadership position in APTA before I applied. I also applied on my the last day of applications, because I just wasn't sure. And again, like, it ended up being an amazing experience, and it's something that I won't forget these past 2 years, serving on the board and working with 2 different groups of awesome students. So again, qualifications, really just looking for people who are passionate and are willing to serve others. Everything else kind of falls in line, of course, but as long as you're willing to learn, I think that'll be the biggest thing, and it will take you a lot further within this experience. Now, are there any questions that anyone has had so far with some of the things that we have gone over?
I was just kind of wondering how the interviews are structured once you try to figure out, who you're slating and how that kind of works.
Yeah, so when the application's finished, so we will have interviews between that August 1st to August 13th format. And essentially what the interviews will look like is, well, they'll be kind of relaxed. So they aren't going to be something that is entirely super serious. So that is one thing we will say, as far as like attire, to try to dress, at least business casual, I would say, for the interview. What they kind of go over is an overview of the person's understanding really of what, APTA is, kind of where they're at from that standpoint, their understanding of positions, kind of what they entail, and just kind of seeing a feel of where that person lies. Because I think something that can go one way or another is that you may have applied for these 3 positions that you're interested in. We may interview this person and think that they actually fit really great with this role. So we might slate them and say, oh, well, you put, president, vice president, we think that you would be amazing at chief delegate because X, Y, and Z. So we would like to see if you would be slated in that position. So that could be another thing as well, just seeing kind of where people fit along that sense. But as far as the interview process, it would be around 30 minutes to no more than an hour. I wouldn't see it going that far, but around that time generally. And it'll just be a time for us to interact with the student and then for them to also give questions back to us that they have. And if I'm missing anything, Tyler or Sophia, you can add in too.
I think you covered it pretty well.
Well, Lisa typed in to the chat. So can we talk about a little bit of the resources that we use to demonstrate knowledge of the association and what we look for in a strong application? I think one of the biggest things is there's actually a link to go pretty much to the APTA website that gives a brief overview of kind of what the application process looks like and some of the positions. And so I think if you were someone who were applying for this opportunity, looking at that position's description document that Sophia put in the chat would be super beneficial. Other things as well that would go on if you were someone who was more interested in, for example, a chief delegate role. I think going over to the APTA hub and kind of seeing what's been going on currently right now as they're getting ready for the House of Delegates would be something that would be really beneficial to just get a feel of what that looks like, what motions are being addressed, what are things that clinicians are talking about at the moment, just so that you can understand a little bit for yourself before that starts. Other things as well, we have resources on YouTube. We have events that we do hold as well. So for example, our APTA student socials that we'll hold, we actually have one July 24th as a little plug that we'll be posting around. So again, it's another opportunity for you to just be involved and kind of understand what is going on at the moment with APTA. And then as far as like, what do we look for in a strong application? If we are being more particular with things, you know, people who have had the prior leadership, obviously it will look stronger on the application. Students that are involved in multiple things. So whether that's, you know, you're involved in sports and you're volunteering at this place, that's, you know, you're in a pro bono clinic, you're doing things outside of your experience as a DPT student or as an SPTA. I think those are things that we would look for that really show a strong application, because it shows that you are someone who is very adaptable and can go through a lot of different things and still be okay in PT school or PTA school. And B, it shows that you are someone who is willing to step outside of your comfort zone to get into an opportunity. And so I think those are main things that we would look for in a strong application. But Sophia and Tyler, if you want to add in on those, that would be beneficial.
I would just add, as far as resources, the best resource you can have is reaching out to a member of the student board that's currently serving on it. Don't be afraid to pester us for anything. We won't bite. I know that when I was going through elections and applying and all that, I was pestering Tayo and other people on the board all the time. So do not be afraid, just reach out. I know that some of the positions have changed a little bit in this next cycle, but the general roles and responsibilities of the board, and I think for the most part, the board experience with a little bit of flexibility in this next cycle, but aside from that remains fairly the same. So we can all speak to like what we've gained from being on the board and talk about what things we've gotten to participate in and stuff like that. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. And as far as what makes a strong applicant, Tayo kind of said it already, just someone who's passionate. You don't have to have a 4.0 GPA. You don't have to be like the president of your DPT class. While leadership experience is great, if you're a passionate person and are passionate about serving, then that's what we're looking for. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I thought everything my two colleagues said was absolutely right. Like Tyler was saying, tell us a little about yourself, you know, brag a little bit. I think we're all pretty humble people as PTs, but let us know what you're doing. Let us know that what you're doing in the community for your school, what other extracurriculars you have. If you work, just give us a sense of who you are. Like, give us a chance of who you are, and let's get to know you through your application. Like Sophia said, please reach out. We love those phone calls where we get to meet students and kind of put a face to the name or face to the application. Yeah, and then resources, check out our strategic plan online if you can. Check out the strategic plan for the APTA, see where you can fit into that mold and what you can bring to the table, and have some concrete goals of what you think you'd like to accomplish or you'd like to see, students in the profession move and what you'd like to see happen in the profession. Because, we've been around for 100 years and, we've hoped to keep at least 100 more. So where do we kind of fit into that, in that picture? One thing I like to add too is, I think there's students from all different years in here, but honestly, I applied the first year and I didn't get slated. So if you apply this year and if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, don't let that discourage you. I think the strongest part of my application is I went through it the year before. So that definitely helped out because I kind of knew what to expect, and I felt more comfortable with the whole process. I didn't get slated my first year, and then when I didn't get slated, ended up being a really cool thing that happened because I ended up finding the core ambassador role in the state of Massachusetts. Got to meet a lot of great people through that and got to build up my resume a little bit. So, everything happens for a reason, and for every reason it doesn't happen, don't let that discourage you. Keep looking for ways to get involved. And there's plenty of them in the APTA.
So for your question, McKenna, you would be able to apply for the chief delegate position, just considering that it is a 2-year role. And well, I will say, as another thing, if you're currently a second year and you're going to be applying, it is okay that you're going a little bit past, considering that's also a new change that we didn't mention that we should talk about, is that the current year, or as far as like your term, is going to be from January 1st to December 31st. So it's going to be a full year, kind of just like how the APTA Board of Directors has their terms. But it's okay if you're going to be graduating in, let's say, May 2023 and applying for this cycle. So for example, Tyler and I were both taking boards 27th, 28th coming up. But we're still going to be on the board until the end of December. So while we're still clinicians. So that is something that has always kind of been a norm, is that you've usually like finished your schooling and then you still have a few months left still serving on the board. So that's fine. But being that that's a 2-year role, it may not work for what the qualifications are for that one. That would probably be better suited for someone who's finishing up their first year going into their second year.
So Tyler, just one thing, if you don't mind, if I just kind of clarify 2 things for this next cycle of the student board. So there will be a chief delegate elected and there will be a student delegate elected. The student delegate will serve 2 years. So in this first cycle, the chief delegate will only serve 1 year. So even though that's supposed to be kind of the chief, the mentor role, this first year, until we kind of get into the cycle, that student will likely not have any experience in the House of Delegates or very little experience in the House of Delegates. But do not fear, because I will be here. The student board has a liaison on APTA's big board that works very closely with this student leadership board as well. So you will learn, but you just won't, like, it will need a year, obviously, to kind of get that delegate to chief delegate kind of cycle rolling. And Zofia will stay on the board. She was elected as our nominating committee chair-elect last year, so she will stay on the board and serve her second year. So if you're elected, you get to serve with Zofia. Thanks, Tayo.
Yeah, so as far as the voting process, so it will be a national election for all students. So once the ballot is open November 1st, any student who is an APTA member will be able to go online and vote for who they want. There's also write-ins as well if they want to write in someone to vote. And there will be more details as it gets closer to that time, but basically you can put in a ballot and you could save it, but as soon as you submit it, you can't make a change. So that's just something to keep in mind. So you can have it. If you want to make changes, don't submit it right away. You can still wait. And so during that time, after the slate is announced, really will be where a lot of the promotions will come on. So students who are put on the slate will be able to kind of show why they are running for the position, why people should vote for them in a campaign style, but not in a way that would be bashing other people. And again, that would be a lot more later details, but we went with it last year for the first time, and I think it worked out pretty well. So again, it's just more so allowing more students to promote it to their schools as well and to the students who they are around. And so that's kind of how the voting process will go. It'll be open for those 30-day window. Anyone who is on or anyone who is a student member on APTA will be able to vote for it. I would say yes, you would probably be better suited for the chief delegate position. Lisa, you can correct me on that one if I'm wrong, but I think the chief delegate role would suit you better.
I'm reading it now.
I was trying to do the math in my head.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know that there's anything in APTA's new bylaws that prohibits December 2023 graduate from serving a longer period of time as a licensed professional. I think that from the standpoint of where you're going to be in your life, in that, you know, in that exact scenario, you know, so let's say you're the delegate and you're elected in you start in 2023, you graduate in December, and then you still have a whole year to be chief delegate. I don't think from a policy, from a rule standpoint, that's prohibited, but I think, you know, still representing the students in the House of Delegates, you know, may not align with where you are in your life at that point. That would just be kind of a possibility that, you know, I think could be very real in a lot of your lives at that point. So I think just kind of thinking about it from a life logistics standpoint and not from a, you know, is it allowed by APTA? As long as you're a student, when you're elected to that position, you're good to go. But just thinking about, you know, how your life, you know, and Tayo can talk about this, you know, Tyler and Sophia, you know, it's once you graduate, it's, you know, your focus is not 100% on your volunteer opportunities at APTA. I mean, I think, you know, you've got to think about that too. You know, starting off with this board, I think when you're a third year, the focus, it's a little easier to focus, but as soon as you graduate, you've got a million things going on. And even when you start clinicals, it gets, you know, I think your time gets a little tight. So long answer, but, you know, I think that's McKenna who asked that. There's nothing stopping you from applying and from being elected, but just kind of think, you know, try to think through how that'll fit into your life, I think.
Zach, to answer your question, I think that's totally dependent on you and how much time you think you can give for it. Some people can handle it well. I mean, I know our commitment as non-com is like 5 to 10 hours a week now, maybe, right? And then it gets peaks up around when the interviews start, and then it kind of fluctuates there. Chase and Mackenzie, they probably have a little bit more week to week as the president and vice president, and then it varies throughout the roles. But I wouldn't limit yourself for any role and think that you can't handle it. But you know your schedule best and you know how you handle it well. Sometimes having a couple things, you know, you manage your time well with a few other things on it. Some people don't. So I would say that's more of what you think and what you think you can handle there. But I've also been, first year is also not a walk in the park. That's not a fun time to be a PT student. So definitely understand what you're going through there. I would not want to go back there ever. Great question though.
I will say, to add to that too, is that like at the end of the day, a lot of your commitment can be, well, I would say overall, that's what's going to be better with the new positions, is the fact that if you are busy and you need help with a task or with something, there are none of the people who are on the board that are going to be willing to help you out. So time commitments do fluctuate based on the position, but at the end of the day, we understand, and APTA staff understands that you do have other commitments outside of your service too. So it is completely okay if you have to step away for something, if you have other priorities. Something that we've been practicing right now, even in our group meeting, is like, if you are doing a lot, we'll put in our text like, hey, if you really need me, like you can text me, but like I'm going to be off this chat for like a week. I have a big exam or something along those lines. A lot of people have done that before. So again, really, time commitment does fluctuate based on position, but overall, it is something that is very flexible. So kind of like what Tyler was saying, understand kind of where you think you would fit best for your time commitment. But at the end of the day, a lot of things have been able to be passed around amongst the other members on the board as well.
Just to piggyback on what Tyler said, I've definitely, the best part being about on the non-com is we have 3 of us. So I've definitely leaned on Sophia and Tyler throughout this term, just when clinicals got crazy or studying for boards or just, life happens. It's great that you have these people to lean on to kind of shoulder a little bit of it. And then you can come back and work on it, because we're all human, things come up, and we all can kind of rely on each other to make things work as well. Honestly, just kind of keeping that open line of communication as we're talking about.
So I had a quick question about the interview times. The dates in August, they kind of are during my finals week for this semester, and then my clinical affiliation for my 1 weeker. I was just kind of wondering, how late are we able to potentially get interviewed for those positions per se?
I would say the times will be determined kind of more so based off of what the student will have for their availability, as well as kind of our availability. Another thing to add as far as like the interview process, you'll have at least 2 of us on that call as well. I think that's something important to mention. There may not be all 3 of us, but there'll be at least 2 of us. And then last year, for example, there were times, honestly, it literally fluctuated based off of what the student needed. Sometimes we had them on the weekend, sometimes we had them Tuesday night, Wednesday night, or afternoon. I would say, because of the fact that we do have some time zone differences, there may be some that would be toward the evening. But again, if there's something that we needed to communicate with someone, like, I really can't make this time, can you make another time? I think that we would be able to figure out, to make sure that we're not making the student kind of go out of their way to be able to interview. We want to make sure that everyone's kind of comfortable in the situation.
Thank you.
Can someone describe what the time commitment is actually like in terms of like meetings and stuff and everything, please?
So currently, actually, really the thing that's kind of hard is that it really will depend kind of on what the board themselves make for what they want to do for the year. So like, for example, meetings, currently right now, our board, we do monthly meetings. They're 1 hour, but the next board could be like, we don't want a monthly, we want a bi-monthly. It's kind of based off of what that board wants to do. So as far as like what it is weekly, as far as like monthly, that's really what it is for all of us to come together. Is we have 1 meeting a month that really goes over what certain things that we have. So like maybe NowCom has some things that we want to talk about. Director of membership wants to talk about something, vice president. So we'll have an agenda and we'll discuss those topics. And then everything outside of that, so kind of speaking to like what we do, for example, NomCom, if someone is emailing us about a question, we'll try to answer those quickly, or set up a phone call, talk with students, Instagram, Twitter, social media outreach. And then specifically for us, we have the APTA Student Socials, so we also partake in that. But really, that's kind of where the there's variability in the time commitment just because a lot of it kind of depends on what that board wants to do. There isn't anything that really is put in there, like you have to have 3 meetings a month. You have to have this opportunity, this opportunity. It's really kind of allows you to have some freedom in where you want to steer that direction for the year. As far as other things that go on, there are some conferences that are available that the board is expected to be at. So like, for example, there's Leadership Congress in August. That is something that we were expected to be at. Now, at the end of the day, if you can't make it for whatever reason, like that's also okay. You can't, you don't have to go out of your way, again, kind of like the interview part. You don't have to go out of your way to do some things if you can't make it. Everyone is kind of understanding of that. And then as well as CSM. So that's like another one where a lot of us will come together. So usually there may be 2 meetings in person that you have. The other one would be virtual, depending on what the board wants to do for that year. Other tasks that might be more particular. So with this new process with the directors, so some people may have an additional meeting with those core ambassadors for their particular region. So that might be one more meeting monthly that you have, or bi-monthly, depending on what is created for that. Other things, social media, for example, how that will be displayed, that would be something that could be added on as hours. But again, a lot of those things will be dispersed amongst multiple people and not one person. And that's going to be the biggest change this upcoming year, is splitting a lot of that work so that not all things just fall onto one person's plate. So to kind of summarize, because I was like all over the place, a lot of it is going to vary based off of what the board that's elected actually wants to do for that year.
Thank you.
And Tayo, your board uses GroupMe to kind of message each other, you know, throughout the week, stay in touch, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a GroupMe that I'm on with the board, and our big board liaison is on. And then I think the 10 of you kind of have your own, right, to kind of bounce ideas and talk through stuff.
Yeah, so we have a GroupMe now. It's kind of like what I was saying, where if you you have a lot that's going on, like finals week, for example, and you're just like, yo, don't talk to me at all. Like, you can type to us in that GroupMe, like, hey, or at least that's what we do right now, is I'm kind of busy for the week. I have a lot going on. If you could appreciate that and allow me to focus on this, that would be great. But if you really do need me, like you can text me, or you can call me, and we can talk about certain tasks that need to be done. So that's kind of the communication standpoint that we have right now. We use GroupMe, and then we have our meetings on Zoom. That could be completely different with the other board. You can use Microsoft Teams, you can use Slack. It's kind of depending on what that board wants. And again, that's where a lot of the innovation and creativity will kind of come from being on the board, is that you have a lot of freedom to kind of set it up how you want it to be. And yeah, what Sophia put in the chat, that kind of would be helpful if you did go to House of Delegates, if you want to be the student chief delegate or the student delegate. If there aren't any other questions, I guess just overall experience, like what it's been like on the board. This is my 2nd year serving, and it's been pretty amazing. Like, I think first time when you're elected, you don't really know what's going to go on. And that's, I guess, another thing as well, is like, even if you're attending this session right now and you really don't understand much about what APTA is and kind of where your role lies within APTA, that this board opportunity could be a perfect example of showing you exactly what you can do right now and in the future. So that was something that happened for me a lot. And it was a process where you start and you really start to understand the different structures within APTA. You understand where students lie, you understand where clinicians lie, and then you also understand how you can blend those together as well. And so your network expands times 1,000. You meet a lot of different people who are doing a lot of amazing things in a lot of different ways. That was something that I appreciated the most about it. And then being able to just connect with so many people doing so many different things has been absolutely unreal. I feel like I have friends in every single state now, so traveling shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I think it gives you a lot of time to grow. So I went through that first year, beginning a little bit lost, started to learn more. I was, led by an awesome guy named Gustavo. Some of you may know him, on our non-com. And then now, I get to step into the role of the chair and kind of work alongside Sophie and Tyler, do the same thing for them as well as our entire board. And time after time, we get to learn more about each other. We get to learn more about the process and how we can help other students. And so that's been my favorite part about it, is being able to take the knowledge that we're getting from this experience and then bringing it to other students. So if that's something that you want to do, I think that would be a really awesome opportunity to, again, learn and then be able to serve other students and teach them the ways that you have learned. And Tyler, Sophie, if you want to just talk a little bit about what you've enjoyed so far this year.
Yeah, for sure. So just echoing what Tayo said, the networking was something I knew that, like, being in this role, I would get to talk to really cool people in APTA, but we've literally had meetings with Roger Her and with the CEO of APTA, and it's been crazy how much of a voice they really give to students on the APTA student board. Like, our board was responsible kind of for making the changes that you see in the board positions coming up in this next cycle. So you really do have a say and you really do have a voice in here. Like, I know when I went into it, I was like, okay, yeah, they say the students have a voice and you get to represent people, but like, how much change do we actually create? And it's actually a lot. And it's been really cool to get to know different people, especially through the student socials that Tayo and myself and Tyler have been putting together. Getting to talk to some awesome people in our profession has just been so crazy. So yeah, I encourage you that if you have room on your plate, I know we talked about with Zach's question, assessing, like, I can't really say. Oh, my watch is talking to me. Assessing like how much you have going on and if you have the space and capacity for another responsibility. But I would also say it's kind of healthy sometimes to have a little something and a network of people outside of your DPT program. And it's been an incredible experience, and I hope to get to serve with some of you guys next year.
Yeah, just to echo what my two friends here said. I mean, it's been a wonderful experience. Just the people you meet, people you get to work with. We have a great board. Met some good friends off this board. Had a chance to work with Lisa, all the different staffs at APTA. Being able to go to CSM. I mean, I can't imagine my student experience without being on this board. Imagine like where I'm at with my career now without being a part of the APTA. There's people I've been able to meet and things we've been able to talk about and all those experiences. It's been great. So I highly encourage you guys all to apply. Like I said, I didn't get my first year and I almost didn't apply last year. I almost actually forgot about the application. I was like, oh shoot, I gotta get an apply. And I am so happy I did, because like I said, I can't imagine what it'd be like without it. So please apply, please reach out if you have any questions. And I'm happy you guys are all here tonight and able to come and able to ask these questions. It's been great. Happy we got to see you all too.
If I could just add, just, rest assured, if you're elected to this board, you will go through an orientation process. So pretty much within the first couple of days, we let it settle that you've been elected, but then, you will go through a series of kind of virtual learning, the governance of the association. So some of it's kind of dry just because we want you all to really understand who we are and what we do from a governance standpoint, what the kind of rules of the association are, but you do get exposed to kind of the inner workings of the association, which I think can be pretty cool. Like Sophia said, like Tyler said, you do get to work closely with members of staff and our public relations area, our web and new media area with me. So, I think it really does kind of give you a very unique opportunity to get to know the association on a level that a lot of our members don't.
Yeah, so the APTA Leadership Congress is something that's new, and it's going to be more like an annual type of meeting now. And it's going to be bringing together a lot of different components and engagement groups that we now have, along with our House of Delegates. And so there will be certain events and lectures that will go on, and a lot of leaders across APTA coming together to figure out what are the things that we want to focus on for the year. What are certain vision points that we want to focus on? And I think this is going to be another opportunity that will be great for the students as we continue to grow this engagement group and kind of what these new positions will look like. Because I think for the future, what it's going to look like is that as we get through the process more and have some of these newer roles defined, is that we have a lot of students coming to this conference or this leadership congress and being able to talk about student business as well. And so we have our House of Delegates, we have their things that we're voting on with our bylaws and different motions, but then we're going to have a bunch of student leaders coming together and being like, okay, like what business do we want to talk about? What are things that we want to focus on as students to be able to expand our experience and be able to reach other students across the country as well? And so that's kind of like a very small, brief overview. I think Lisa may be able to give a better
Yeah, that was great.
understanding of
Tyler.
that.
It was really good. The Leadership Congress is kind of an invite only meeting, so it's not open to all APTA members. It's really for now, our members who are kind of serving a role. So we have a little over 400 delegates who serve in the House of Delegates. We've got committees who are going to meet and kind of have face-to-face meetings. The student program that we're offering, we invited all of our chapters and our sections to select 2 students to send to Leadership Congress. So that's kind of that student component. And what we're hoping to offer, and again, this is the first year we're doing this, so we're going to continue to get bigger and better, hopefully. But what we want to offer is really been inspired by the experience of the student board over the last few years, or the last 15 or 20 years that I've been working with them. We want to show our students APTA, who we are, what we do, and get you guys connected to each other, and give you an experience that's going to make you feel like you have a home at APTA. So that is kind of the program that we're trying to build for our students, and then we'll kind of build it from there. But hopefully I'll see a couple of you if you guys have been selected by your chapters or sections to attend. I'd love to meet you and talk to you, but definitely, keep an eye out for this year's program, for next year's program for sure. But that's kind of what we want to build with Leadership Congress, is kind of a platform for our members who have raised their hands to volunteer for the association to all get together and do their work and learn and connect is really what it's all about.
Frankie, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. So for those who are interested in the student chief delegate or the student delegate position, I think it was suggested that we try to attend to the APTA House of Delegates. I believe it's in DC, but for those who might not be able to afford to go, is there a virtual option to attend, or?
Yeah, the entire House of Delegates will be streamed.
Okay.
All of our members. Yeah. So basically, if you're a member of APTA, you'll be able to go on our homepage and it will be very, very obvious. Click here to observe the House of Delegates.
Something to add to that too, Lisa, I don't know if the opportunity was closed yet, but the usher opportunity for House of Delegates, is that still open?
No. Yeah, that fills up very quickly, Ty. I mean, I was just talking to Chase about this yesterday. So we do have an opportunity for students to come to House of Delegates and volunteer to be House ushers. I think it's only 15 positions are open each year. And that's real kind of, you got to really be paying attention to see that opportunity kind of come across your email, because it happens quickly and then it fills up quickly. So, I mean, we get upwards of, God, in some years we've had over 100 applications for 15 positions. So, but it's super fun. Like, every student I've ever known who's ever been a house usher just absolutely loves it. It's really fun. It's really fast paced, and you're in the house, just kind of seeing all the business and hearing all the business taking place. So I want to say that we opened that opportunity in May. But pay attention to, student social media, pay attention to the newsletters that we send you guys every month, because that's kind of where we post that information, really on social media. If you're not if you're not following our student platforms on social media, I really encourage you to, because it's really the best way that we communicate with you all, I think.
Can you all hear me?
We can barely hear you.
Now I can hear you, not
Oh
before.
gosh, it's a dumb feature that I have with my headphones. Okay, so I signed myself up to be like on the newsletter of different states' like opportunities. So depending on what state you're in, I think some states are still looking for a core ambassador, or no, a student delegate for their state specifically. And depending on what chapter funds that they have, it might help you. They might be able to sponsor your trip to go to the House of Delegates. So if a spot for your state has not been filled yet for a PT delegate position in there specifically, it might be something to consider and look into.
Yeah, no, that's awesome insight. Thank you, Patrick. All right, I think if there aren't any other questions, we can end the call for tonight. But again, thank you all for coming and learning a little bit more about what the process will look like, what APTA Student Board of Directors kind of is, and what opportunities that are available for you. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to any one of us. I'll leave my email in the chat. Lisa just put hers down, super quick with it. And you can let us know if there's anything that's going on that you want us to talk, if you want to chat on the phone. We're always willing to talk on the phone, kind of, or through via Zoom, however works best for you. Kind of what other questions that you have, what the process is like. So for sure, feel free to reach out to us. And we hope to see all of you apply. We're looking forward to reviewing applications as well. So again, if there aren't any other questions, I hope you all enjoy your night and feel free to reach out to us.
Everyone, thank you so much.
Thanks for hosting this opportunity.